I'm joined by Alayo Akinkugbe, n'est-ce pas?
Yeah.
Right? Who has written this wonderful book, Reframing Blackness. And I want to start really with the title itself, which is very clever. Where did that come from?
Before I start, I just want to thank Marianne for having me, and Mam and Claude and everyone who has made this event possible. I remember seeing the Diaspora Salon online last year and being here just before and thinking, wow, what an incredible event. So it's genuinely quite surreal to be back here. The book is out and to be talking about it here in this setting with all these people. So thank you so much for having me.
It's a wonderful book, by the way.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you very much.
It's a fascinating read.
Reframing Blackness. The title actually came quite spontaneously to me when I was commissioned to write the book. At the time, I was just finishing my degree in history of art at Cambridge. And I'd started this page that I was using. It is called A Black History of Art. And I was using it to sort of do my own personal research because my degree wasn't fulfilling this itch that I had to learn more about blackness in art history. So when I was commissioned to write the book, obviously a bit nervous because I was 20 actually at the time. So I hadn't yet even turned 21.
Let's just digest that. 20.
And it was very daunting. And
let's all remember what we were doing at 20. Yes.
It was very daunting.
Yeah.
It was, of course, this period where there was this sort of mass attention given to black cultural production, at least in London and in the UK. It felt like that suddenly everybody was interested in what we had to say. And so, the Reframing Blackness, the idea was to look again at art history as we know it, Western art history, the sort of art history that you expect to see in the West's major museums, the temple-fronted museums, and to focus only to sort of hone in on the black narratives within art history. And so that was the idea of reframing, relooking, sort of zooming in. That was kind of how I pictured it in my head.
So it's about taking a second look at existing works of art. Mm-hmm. So there are museum goers all over the world, right? Mm-hmm. Millions and millions, and so you walk in and you've seen a Monet and a Manet a million times, hundreds of times, and yet, what are we missing? What are we not seeing in some of these pieces that are so well known? Because you go into the Louvre and you see La Joconde, you see the Mona Lisa, right? But yet, everyone lines up for her only.
Exactly. I remember at university in the first year we were all given the task to write about an object in Cambridge, anything that sort of, I guess we were interested enough to dedicate like half of a year of research to. It took me a while to find something, and I was scrolling through the Fitzwilliam Museum's website and I saw this drawing of, and the Fitzwilliam Museum is the major museum in Cambridge, and there was a drawing of a mixed-race model who had been posing at the RA in the 1860s, and I was fascinated by it because she had Afro hair and was depicted with such truth, and I'd learned about the Pre-Raphaelites, this movement of artists in the UK in the 1860s, and I learned about them and their love of beauty and depicting truth to nature, and all the Pre-Raphaelite muses are very pale-skinned and ginger heads. I was so shocked to see this very truthful depiction of a black woman. And so in terms of going to museums and focusing on these figures, that was what I would always find myself doing, because I was learning about this very sort of white art history, very Western art history, where I could see physically the black figures. I would always become interested. A professor who was supervising that first year dissertation pointed me to Dr. Denise Morel's work. And at the time, Posing Modernity was on at the Musée d'Orsay. I couldn't go because I had a Nigerian passport and it was difficult to get a visa. I was at university and there were just so many complications. But I did get the catalogue, and that catalogue completely changed my perspective about history and had me looking at these paintings and looking at these museums completely differently. So I owe a lot to Dr. Denise Morel.
She is.
And actually, I interviewed her.
We're going to get to that.
Yes, yeah.
We're going to get to that.
So that was a turning point.
And to have a professor, though, point you in that direction was probably, that's unusual.
Yes, I think it was unusual. And this particular professor, Jean-Michel Masson, he specialized in Dutch etchings, but also in very broadly African art. And so that was why I had wanted him to supervise me, and then it led me down this path.
So I'm going to come back to your age a second, because you said this at 20 and I'm kind of, a little bit obsessed with that. You're so young to have written a book like this that's so mature, and it's something that I would have expected to come out of someone who's had a career in this for decades, really. Why were you so passionate about this? Because I've not read anything like this before.
One thing that I spoke about in the chapter that looks at the curriculum and the way that art history is taught, had I not had the opportunity to study art history at A-level, so in the UK that's when you're 16 to 18, I probably wouldn't be doing any of this. I think it was purely by chance. I had this interest in art, but I didn't see myself as an artist or a painter in the conventional sense. And so I did a taster session and I really enjoyed it, and it was very, very Eurocentric. And when I applied to Cambridge, I knew what I was sort of getting into. I knew that it wouldn't necessarily have much to do with Africa or to do with blackness, but I didn't think that it would be completely off the curriculum. So I guess the passion to sort of continue with this came from being able to do my own research, put it on Instagram, seeing how many other people had similar experiences of studying the same subject and having all of the black artists and black writers excluded from their curriculum. That sort of gave me the momentum to keep going. And so many opportunities have come about because of the page, interviewing lots of artists who inspire me for my podcast or writing for magazines about these subjects. I think all of that has sort of kept me going because it feels like there's a purpose beyond me that kind of underpins all of the work that I've been doing.
Everyone here will read your book, obviously. That's an assignment. But you do, without giving too much away, can you explain this moment when you run into this other black woman in the museum who's looking at a painting and just sort of just how you're taken away from, you're kind of removed from the actual reality and taken to this place.
And this all kind of starts with the painting itself, because I'd seen that painting much earlier. There's a painting by a French woman artist that was made in 1800, a white woman, and it is called Portrait d'une Négresse, but it has alternative titles. So one of the titles is Portrait d'une femme noire, and then Portrait of Madeleine, and it was shown to me by my teacher, art history teacher, who again, one of those people that sort of just sets you on a path that you don't even know what you're going to find, and it leads you, like she led me to that painting. There was a competition for young people to talk about art, to get young people to talk about art in the UK. She really encouraged me to do it, and I was slightly affronted by the painting initially. It's housed at the Louvre, and it's a black woman, semi-nude, and she's got a white head tie. I felt that she was showing it to me because she felt that this is the sort of subject I should be looking at. But
at the same time,
what's strange is that actually it led me down this path of being so interested in muses and black representation and all of this. So actually, it was a very important moment in my life. And I finally went to see that painting in person in probably 2022. And I'd been looking around the Louvre. I felt that the painting was famous because in sort of the sphere that I occupied of like the quote-unquote black art world, that painting is known. And so I expected it to be on like one of the main floors or like just somewhere. And it had been in Beyonce's music video. So I was like, people want to see this painting. People know about it, the general public. When I eventually found it, the room was empty. And the only other person in there was another black woman. She was also a student. And she was just sitting in front of the painting. I took a picture of the moment. I could prove that this happened. I sat down next to her and I was looking at it for a while. Then I just asked her what she thought about the painting. And she was the person to tell me that it is the only single portrait of a black woman in the Louvre. And I hadn't known that. It wasn't something that I had looked into. And
alone.
Yes. Only a black woman in the frame. And
really?
So that's why she had come to see it. Lots of people came through. I think it's a pretty unremarkable painting to most people, but to both of us, we had this like shared moment. She was telling me her thoughts about the painting. She presumed that it had been painted by a man, and she thought that the sitter didn't have much autonomy and that she'd been made to pose nude. And it was just such a wonderful dialogue. And it's insane to me, looking back now, that a painting could have led me on this path. I went there to see that painting. I wasn't really at the Louvre to see anything else. And also, it's the very first work that I posted about on a black history of art, not thinking it would ever sort of reach tens of thousands of people. And yeah, so strange. The story.
Do you know if the Louvre has moved the painting now? Thanks
so
to
it's
you?
still there. It's actually amongst other paintings from the same period of white female aristocrats, and it's in the middle of the wall. It's just in an upper room, a much smaller gallery than the sort of main ones. The thing that struck me, though, was that the chosen title was Portrait of a Black Woman, not Portrait of Madeleine, but or Portrait presumed to be of Madeleine. There was no mention of her name in the description. Also,
let's let that sink in for a second again.
The painting was made during a brief period of emancipation in the French colonies, so it was a 6-year period. And the description in the Louvre really, really leans onto that. It's like she was probably a free woman. It was a period of emancipation, but it completely excludes the fact that this was a very brief period, and that it was, and that just a few years later, slavery was reinstated in French colonies. And I found that also very disturbing, and I think that needs to be repaired. I wrote about that a bit.
Yes, you did. You did. So, yeah. There is a subgroup, obviously, to your subject matter, right? I mean, you're talking about Black faces, but Black women in art, there's a lack of the presence, even in modern day. And we're going from the Louvre to Brooklyn, New York, at the Brooklyn Museum. Yep. There is a famous exhibit by the artist Judy Chicago called The Dinner Party. Yes. And for people who don't know what the dinner party is, maybe you can explain better, but it's different seatings of women who have been remarkable throughout history.
An icon of feminist art history was very much included on my degree. So Judy Chicago is a very well-known American artist. She's seen as a kind of icon of feminist art history, but really, I suppose, white feminism. And she has this installation that's very canonized. I'm sure that most people who study art history nowadays will learn about this installation. It's at the Brooklyn Museum. And it's a big, enormous triangular dinner table. And there are place settings of all of these women who have contributed greatly to history.
Iconic feminists from...
Yes, right. Exactly. So sort of like Virginia Woolf, Artemisia Gentileschi, who was a female painter in the Renaissance, is sort of getting a lot of attention now. But names like that who were probably a lot more sidelined in the 80s than, say, nowadays, when this work was made. And then there's only one Black woman.
So, yes, made in the 80s, by the way, we have to say.
Yes.
So, yes.
Or is it the 70s?
I'm not certain. Late 20th century.
I can't remember. Late 20th.
Yeah. The only place.
Yeah, there's just one Black woman at the table, and it's Sojourner Truth. And crucially, in the style of that kind of 70s, 80s feminist art, all of the place settings are sort of reminiscent of a vulva. But Sojourner Truth has 2 heads, and the middle one is an African mask. Which, to me, as a Nigerian, I was like, Sojourner Truth by the African... Like, it just feels very... kitsch and like fetishistic and bizarre.
Exactly.
And why has she got a different part of the body? Why is her
colorizing?
Yes. And why has she got the head when every other woman's got down there?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't really. Anyway, so yeah, that's.
So no. So I'm thinking of that, and it seems as though again Black women have been fetishized in art throughout, and you're seeing that in in your observation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because we go into Olympia, Edouard Manet's Olympia.
Sorry?
The Olympia.
Olympia,
yeah,
sorry. It's the accent.
Sorry.
Olympia, of course.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Right, and so, and Manet, another famous painter, obviously, and you see the Black woman in the background.
Yes. So there's a chapter in the book that is dedicated to muses, and the reason I decided to do that chapter was because a big part of what had been happening on A Black History of Art and the writing that I was commissioned to do was about muses. When you have these museums where they maybe don't have a Black artist in their collection, but they're trying to tap into everything that was happening after 2020. They wanted to look at the Black presences in the paintings that they did have, since they perhaps didn't have any Black artists in their collection, or they focus on maybe somewhere in Europe in the sort of 19th century or something. So I decided to do a chapter that would focus on Black muses that I've researched and that have had a big impact on me. I guess I was trying to sort of present the muse as a kind of like co-creator of meaning, and also I was inspired by a lot of the lives of these people. I think the chapter about muses kind of follows this lack of autonomy to it starts with with Madeleine, who was likely enslaved or was a servant to the artist Marie-Guillemine Bernard's brother. And then we moved through all of these characters like Aïcha Goblet, who was a celebrity in Paris, in Montparnasse in the 20s, and who she had a lot more autonomy in her own right.
Sure.
And I was sort of trying to demonstrate that shift, not to say that it was as direct as that, but that was a story I was sort of trying to tell with the Muses chapter.
And we find out about the identity of Laure, right?
Yes.
That she has a name. And again,
Denise Morel.
Dr. Morel.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me, picking on...
Oh, yes. Sorry, I do sort of know what you might have been trying to get at.
Yes.
The Manet's Olympia, in a lecture about feminist art history, and then I watched one of Dr. Denise Morel's lectures where you had a similar experience of studying Olympia and Laure being ignored. But what happened for me was it was a feminist art history lecture. It was, I can't remember the title exactly, but it was about giving muses their herstory. So we looked at Manet's Olympia, which has a model called Victorine in the foreground, a white woman, and a black woman who is a maid, Laura, in the background. And the professor was talking about how Victorine had been wanting to become an artist, and we need to give her dues, and a lot of these muses don't get credit for their own creativity, etc., etc., etc. Waiting, and then we go to the next slide, and it's like
completely
we're talking
ignoring
about her story here. Like, why are we not talking about the black woman's story?
Yeah.
And that was very jarring.
And you did a lot of research too, I would imagine, as I know Dr. Morel did, to find the identities of these women, because they're always sort of either they're unnamed or they're actually erased from the picture entirely.
Ooh, yes.
And you do have a chapter about that too.
Yeah, well, that's in the, I think, the Muses chapter as well. So there's a few examples. There's a painting that is now in the Met, portrait of the Belizaire and the Frey family. It's a painting which the New York Times actually covered when it entered the collection of the Met. But it's a painting from Louisiana, and there's a black servant on the right standing to the right on the edge of the painting next to the white family. He at some point was painted out of the picture. The painting was bought at auction from this museum that had it in storage but had never been on display, and it was deaccessioned from the museum. And when it was restored, they found the portrait of the black boy, Belizaire. But Jeremy K. Simeon collects images of black people in American history. I think her name is Katie Shannon. He and Katie Shannon tried to find the records for who this person could have been, and she found his name Belizaire in the records, and
he belonged to that family.
And he belonged to that family, but was sold soon after the painting at some point. But yeah, I haven't got much more to say on it.
Well, it seems as though, and this came up too, when you have a white figure and a black person in proximity, they're always ignored, right? Generally speaking.
And that's why I like the way
white
it's
figure
been renamed at the Met as Belizaire and the Frey children.
And versus the other way around.
I think the narrative around the painting is such that should center on this figure, because that is sort of like, that is the provenance of the painting, everything that's happened to the painting, who this figure was, to me at least, seems like the main story there in that painting. So I do like that renaming.
In that order.
But,
you know, you recount a moment when you go to the National Gallery in London. You were about to give a talk there.
Yes.
And a security guard flags you and your mother.
Yes.
To show you a painting of the Three Wise Men.
Yes. So...
And why do you think that
happened?
Yeah.
So, my mum and I were walking through the National Gallery. I was about to do a talk. It was one of my first kind of public talks. The talk was called Rethinking Blackness. So, yeah. You can see
Rethinking, reframing.
In Western art, how do Western narratives of art history inform our perception of blackness? Something like that. Very, like, Cambridge-y title. Now I do everything. I try to make things just more simple and direct. Anyway, so my mum and I were walking around, and a black security guard stopped us, and he was in a rush, and we were just kind of walking through the corridor, and he was like, I need to show you something. I need to show you two something. Come with me. we had no idea what was going on, and we followed him, and he took us into this small room, and it had Netherlandish oil paintings in it, and there were a few nativity scenes, and he just went, in this room you can see 3 black kings. He pointed at 3 paintings, and he left. And we were kind of like, whoa, like, that was an interesting encounter. Yeah. The reason that it was profound to me was, one, because he had singled us out as other black people from, I guess, a crowd of predominantly non-black people in the museum. And he wanted us specifically to see dignified representations of black people, because there are lots of paintings in which black figures are in the background or on the peripheries and they're serving. But in most instances where you see a nativity scene, the black person is a king. So, and I was about to talk a bit about that, because in the room where I was doing the lecture, there was an enormous adoration of the Magi painting. But he obviously had no idea. I mean, I guess he just thought that we were just visiting the museum. But it showed me how important it can be to have, or to bring attention to these dignified representations of black people, and how important representation can be, because it created that whole exchange, that whole encounter. And had I known nothing about art history, or had I not been an art historian, and had I just wandered into the National Gallery, that would have had a very, very big impact on me, and maybe changed the way I saw myself in relation to art history and these kinds of institutions and these kinds of paintings, where you don't really expect to see a good, or let's say a positive representation of yourself, kind of.
As much as we're delving into art history and going way into the past, you're doing something very modern, which is you have an Instagram page called A Black History of Art.
Yes.
And what has that page opened up for? I don't know how many followers you have, sorry, but I'm a follower. But
thanks.
Everybody should follow.
Yeah.
What has that done for art lovers and maybe and even amateurs?
The intention with the page all along, I think maybe because I was overwhelmed by essay writing, was to just speak as myself. I would speak in the first person, in very direct, clear language, trying not to use jargon, and just keep it very open, so that it could be, hopefully the captions could open up conversations, and they would generate conversations in the comments. And often I'd add like a question at the end, like, what do you think? Or that someone has suggested
this. It's even in your title.
Yeah.
What's black about
history of art? The page, of course, has been the source of everything, but it's also helped me to have like a very clear and grounded idea of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because the intention was always just to share and to have discussions, to do the research for myself, so that I could leave Cambridge with this art history degree, but also feel like I had been able to engage with what truly interests me beyond just my dissertation. Because, of course, in all degrees, you can do your dissertation and you have the space to do your own work. But this allowed me to, I guess, go the extra mile, because I was able to have the page and then also do my dissertations focusing on art history, where there was no space within the curriculum. So, yeah, it's opened up conversations with people across the globe. It has allowed me to think about art history in a very expansive and less rigid way than perhaps Cambridge was pushing me to, and to think about blackness in all contexts around the world. And that was something, especially at the beginning, because I haven't been posting as much because I've become very busy. But especially in the beginning, I was just thinking about trying to be as various as possible. So not trying to present a monolithic idea of what black art was. I don't even like that phrase, black art, but blackness in art and in art history. So trying to keep it, if I do a painting, then next I should do a sculpture from somewhere else, or then I do a sitter or a muse, just to make it so that it was clear that there's so much, like you couldn't possibly write a book that was a black history of art and encompass everything, for example. And I think that everything that I sort of put into the page is what I like carry through the other things that I'm doing. So yeah, the Instagram has been very formative for me.
What do you think about the individual who's now running the United States has decided a while ago to do a bit of whitewashing in the museums and in the school curriculum and that sort of thing? And tell me about how well this book is doing in America.
So this book and this incredible cover that we ended up with was actually designed by my US publishers, who ended up not publishing my book.
Say that again.
So I had a US book deal, which I was really pleased about, because a lot of my page's audience has been in the US. And of course, that knocks my confidence, and in comes imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, maybe Americans don't want to read this book. what happened was that about 3 weeks into Trump's presidency, they had edited the book, they had designed this cover, and in the UK, we actually just decided to match the cover because we loved what they had chosen so much. And there was pushback from the board of the university press all of a sudden at the very last minute, and they were sort of confused. The editorial team were like, this doesn't normally happen. And then I realized the broader picture of everything that's going on and fears about funding being cut and witch hunting and things like that. And my editors in the UK were absolutely convinced as well that that was what was going on, but they just pulled the book. And after they'd put in all the work, they'd edited it into, not that it takes much to edit into American English, but you know what I mean. And they'd put in all the work and they had to pull it. And
so it's not been published in the US?
It hasn't been published in the US, but my UK publishers have distributed it in the US. But that means I haven't been able to sort of like do PR or basically promote it in the US. So... Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, but I'm talking to a couple of people about doing some things, but I would love to obviously promote it there as well. But yeah, that was a direct impact of this person coming into office. Reinstating
what they call sanity or something in his whatever the stupid title is.
Yeah.
Anyway, Alayo has books to sign, and I really urge you to have her leave without them.
Yes, please.
Because it's really extraordinary. And thank you, Alayo, for being here
and
for what you've done.
Thank you for your questions. And thank you for having me.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.